Chapter 27, An Infinite Maze of Office Spaces and Figures in the Fog. Why you may be able to survive a clump easier than you thought in the Backrooms. I stared at the gray carpet that made up the floor as I walked past row after row of cubicles, avoiding staring at the lifeless, modernistic displays that surrounded me as I tried to focus on finding a way out of this place. I need to escape. And I know this place is cool and all, but I really can't stay here, I said to myself as I admired a clump of the Backrooms mushrooms that was sprouting from the corner of a cubicle I had just passed. The faint sounds of raining followed me as I walked deeper into the sublevel, slowly diminishing as I got farther from the door I entered through. I mean, an infinite maze of office spaces, an abandoned modern office? Like, come on, what even is this place? I said to myself as I stopped next to the cubicle near the 100 feet mark from the door. I turned around, facing the door that laid 100 feet away as I took a shaky deep breath in. It's kind of too late to turn back now, I guess, I muttered as I stared at the gray, small speck in the distance. My legs burned as I began walking again, my calf and thigh also straining themselves as they begged for me to stop moving. I clenched my teeth in pain as I stared at the space ahead, watching the infinitely expanding maze of cubicles as it spread out for trillions of miles in all directions. This level is actually crazy, I said softly as I glanced up at the ceiling. The white fluorescent light panels buzzed and flickered as I slowly walked down the carpeted path between the rows of cubicles around me. The sound of pencils writing filled the air as I slowed to a stop. Is someone here? Wait! People! I cried as I looked around with a rising glimmer of hope that I wasn't alone. What? This doesn't make sense. What the fuck? I cried as I looked around with a rising glimmer of hope that I wasn't alone began to shine brightly deep in the corners of my mind. I smiled softly before it faded, the grin leaving almost as quickly as it appeared as I stared at the north array of cubicles as it stretched on infinitely. There's no one here though, so who made that noise? I said worriedly as I began to look around, now paranoid that something was wrong. Who made that noise? I cried as I began to run, sprinting down the corridor as the rows of cubicles became a white blur. A massive clump of Backrooms covered the entire west wall of a cubicle, the sight making me stop in my tracks. Holy shit! There's so many more out here than there were at the beginning of this place, I said as I stared at the 5-foot-tall wall of Backrooms in front of me. The sound of thunder slowly faded in the distance, making me tense up a bit. Shit. Thunder, I said fearfully as I began walking away from the giant formation of white Backrooms, leaving the massive white-colored mushrooms in the dust as I began making my way down the corridor again. The fog grew thicker, pulling around my legs as I walked, as it became as high as 5 feet and high. The fog grew thicker, pulling around my legs as I walked as it became as high as 5 feet in some areas. What's with this fog? I said curiously as I stared at the sea of white mist that now surrounded me. I took a deep breath in, inhaling a massive amount of moisture as I choked on my own air. Shit! I gasped as I continuously swallowed in an attempt to clear the moisture from my throat. I glanced around nervously, trying to see if anything laid within the fog before freezing completely. The sounds of movement surrounded me as I slowly stepped back, stepping away from the sounds ahead as I stared into the thick fog. The sea of fog drifted around the thing that approached me, revealing its location as I choked on my words. What is that thing? I cried as my eyes fell upon a massive clump of human limbs and flesh as it crawled towards me. Its body being made up of human limbs and body parts as its fleshy skin surrounding the main lump that appeared to be its main body. It's some sort of clump, I said as I stared at the creature in horror, the smell of aging flesh filling the air as the air grew extremely cold, not coming from the fog anymore. No, time to get out of this fog, I choked as I stumbled away from the creature, watching as it snorted and choked on nothingness while it crawled through the dense fog in my direction. I don't want to deal with you, I cried as I grabbed my combat knife from my pocket and held it out, waving it back and forth in front of the creature in an attempt to scare it off. I will kill you, I said as confidently as I could, holding the blade just a couple of feet away from the creatures that snorted and held out a set of mangled human arms as it tried to grab my weapon. No! I cried as I kicked out, my foot connecting with the creature as it wrapped its set of arms around my leg. Real quick, just disclaimer. I live with family, even though I'm 18, and it's 1 a.m. right now, so I can't really scream like I'm supposed to at this point. Just an FYI. So, sorry it's so let down. Fuck no! Let go! I screamed as I kicked my foot frantically, squirming in terror as the clump wrapped its limbs around my leg. An incredible burning sensation crept up my calf as I realized the creature's skin was consuming my flesh. Let the fuck go! I screamed at the top of my lungs as I leaned in and swung my knife at the creature, the blade slicing one of its arms as it wailed in pain. Dark red crimson-colored blood began pouring from the slash in the clump's human limb as it wailed loudly. That's what you get! I cried as I stared at the creature with a rising sense of confidence. The clump began reaching for my leg again with its other arm, its thin fingers groping at my foot in the fog as the creature snarled angrily. I gripped my knife tightly and kicked out, my foot connecting with the creature's main body as it kicked back, the set of human legs flailing from its body as it attempted to copy my movements. What the fuck are you? I cried as I lunged forwards, making the creature wail angrily as I swung my knife back and forth in front of it. It attempted to grab me multiple times, failing with every swing of my knife as I slowly pushed the creature back. The clump snorted before grabbing my knife with an unpredictable amount of force, ripping it from my hands as it threw it at the cubicle. Ripping it from my hands as it threw it to the cubicle to my left. The blade spun through the air before smashing into a computer screen. The electronic device shooting sparks outward as the screen glitched furiously. The screen changing colors as the ink inside melted down in waves. Cracks spiderwebbed on the screen as the computer began to smoke, the knife having broken something in it as the fog grew thicker around me. Shit! Stupid fucking creature, I needed that! I cried as I jumped out of the way, just barely dodging an attack from the clump as it attempted to grab my leg. I began to run, darting into the cubicle as I grabbed my knife and pulled. No, why won't it come out? It's just an old computer, it's not that strong! I yelled as I tugged as hard as I could, causing the screen to shatter more as the inside of the monitor smoked intensely. Fucking hell! I screamed as I leapt back, holding the knife with both hands as I ripped it from the computer screen. My breath caught on my throat as I fell backwards, smashing into the cubicle wall behind me as the corner of my arm clipped the desk behind the cubicle I had just fell through. My head smashed into the back of the computer and the next cubicle over as I sunk to the ground, a thin cloud of dust and smoke billowing from the now-destroyed cubicle walls as the pens and pencils from the desk behind me rolled off the surface of the workspace and onto the floor. Shit. It's gonna get me now, I mumbled as my vision waved in and out. The outline of the sickening mass of body parts became visible through the fog as I gripped my combat knife tightly, my right shoulder laying limp as I struggled to move. Fresh blood poured from a gash in the back of my head, soaking my hair as the computer behind me flashed at the warning screen. What do I do? I groaned painfully as I watched the clump crawl closer. My eyes started up at the computer above me as I shifted in the rubble of the drywall that made up the cubicle a few moments before. My head spun as I slowly got to my feet, using the desk behind me to pull myself up as the clump entered the cubicle I was in. Take this, you piece of human trash! I cried as I grabbed the monitor with all my strength I had and shoved it onto the creature, sending the 40-pound computer onto the clump as it fell from the desk and onto the creature below. The computer monitor hit the clump with a sickening crunch, a pool of crimson-red honey surrounding the computer monitor as I shoved the next cubicle's desk out of the way and escaped the clump's grasp. Fuck! I actually did it! I cried out happily as I glanced behind me to see the clump's limbs twitching under the heavy computer monitor on top of it. The crimson pool surrounding the monitor grew shiny as the light of the fluorescent light panels reflected off of it from above. I can't believe that actually worked, I muttered as I began to grow lightheaded. My vision waved as I stumbled forwards before falling to my knees, the combat knife falling from my hands as it skidded a few feet away. I landed on the ground hard, holding my upper body up by my hands as I gasped for air. Fuck, what's my head? I said fearfully as I fell onto my stomach, my face hitting the carpet with a crunch as I bit my lip. Blood began seeping from my nose and from the new gash in my lip as I rolled onto my back. My head spun as the ceiling waved back and forth. Shit, I said weakly as I propped myself up against the nearest cubicle wall and tenderly touched my head. The massive gash soaked my fingers in blood as the tip of my hand made it burn with extreme pain. I growled in pain as I grew more and more lightheaded, my vision blurring over as my ears began to ring. What have I done? I said softly as I began to grow weary and weak. My head struggled to stay upright as I began to slowly shift to the side, my body leaning to the left as I struggled to stay conscious. I cut myself off as my vision faded out one last time. The last thing I saw being the Clump struggling to get out from under the monitor as I fell onto my side and hit the ground with a loud thump before everything went black. Segment 2. What happened? I mumbled weakly as I began to regain consciousness. The air was cold and a thin fog settled around me as I began to wake up. I squinted my eyes, trying to see what was around me as I felt sick to my stomach. I passed out? I said groggily as I looked around, my eyes darting around the thin, half-an-inch tall fog as I strained to see any clues of what had happened. My ears rang softly as my muscles remained as sore as ever. The Clump, I said weakly as I began to crawl on the carpet towards the computer monitor I remembered knocking down earlier. The sound of my body shifting against the carpet was all that was heard as the fluorescent lights flickered softly above me. Where is it? I said fearfully as my body remained weak and fatigued. Wave after wave of nausea and paranoia crashed over me as I collapsed next to the crimson pool of blood and a completely crushed computer monitor. Did it get mad? I said dreadfully as I stared at the almost flat 1980s CRT computer monitor on the ground in front of me. A pile of glass and shredded wire panels surrounding the mess of computer parts as the empty husk of the computer's frame laid a few feet away. It appeared that the Clump had torn apart the computer using its limbs and escaped. Shit. I need my knife, I groaned weakly as I began crawling back to where I regained consciousness. My head was heavy and my palms were soaked in blood, my tattered clothes causing more friction as I crawled across the carpet towards my combat knife that laid a few feet in the distance. I exhaled as I fell to the ground, letting my chin hit the carpet as the taste of metal filled my mouth. Blood, I thought to myself as I wrapped my fingers around the knife's handle slowly. My eyes burned as my muscles began to tense up completely. No, I need to keep moving, I mumbled as I struggled to get back into the army crawl position again. My body grew weaker as I groggily stared at the lights, collapsing again as I fell onto my right side. The last thing I saw was the fluorescent lights flickering slowly before it all went white. Segment 3. Shit. I keep passing out, I muttered weakly as I looked at the ground in front of me. I had ended up laying on my stomach with my head facing the cubicle wall as my hand clutched my combat knife I had ended up laying on my stomach with my head facing the cubicle wall as my hand clutched my knife while I laid on the stiff carpet. This needs to end now, meaning I need to get out of here, I said groggily as I slowly got to my feet and looked around. Fuck, I ruined that too. I said groggily as I slowly got to my feet, using the cubicle wall as support. I shakily stood next to the cubicle wall and looked around. Where do I go, though? Should I keep going straight or do I turn back? I mumbled as I turned to face where I came. The smashed computer monitor laid in a puddle of crimson red blood, standing as a subtle reminder that everything here wasn't what it seemed as I turned to face the maze of cubicles ahead of me again. Shit. I'm starving, I said softly as the sound of my stomach grumbling filled my ears. I scanned over the cubicles, searching for something to eat as I slowly began to limp north. The sounds of papers shuffling filled the air as I turned to face the cubicles to my right. What is that? I said fearfully as I locked eyes with what I felt was the most scariest entity yet.